indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Am I reading this? What am I reading that they're having it? I will open tonight's meeting and ask if there's any opening public comment from the board this evening.
I would like to mention a couple of things. I just read in the Fitchburg Sentinel that 4 Lunenburg residents completed the Boston Marathon. Congratulations to Katie Collette, Nicole Dion, Sharon Rodequins, and Karma Tusignant. I also just learned that the Lunenburg police have installed an unused medication drop box in the lobby of the police station. So now unused, unwanted human and animal medications that you just don't have any use for can be dropped off at the police station anytime the station's open. CVS donated the drop box, and the DEA comes and picks up the materials a couple times a year. The police installed it, so at no cost to us, we're helping to save our waters. So thanks to the police.
Thank you. And congratulations, too, to those runners, all the runners yesterday, but especially the 4 Lunenburg runners. Any other public comment from the board? 2 announcements. First one is that the Cub Scouts are going to be using the front lawn of the Ritter Building for their annual Mother's Day plant sale, which will be Saturday, May 9th from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. So they'll be setting up some tents out there, helping to raise money for the nonprofit scouting activities. So again, Mother's Day plant sale from the Cub Scouts, Saturday, May 9th, 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And then, it's been in the news lately, and I guess now that the nice weather's out and pets are out and kids are out and people are out, they expect from every department that has been consulted a very high volume of ticks this year. So please be forewarned and take all the proper precautions that with all the snow we had, it, according to the scientists and the nature people, that it insulated actually the ticks from the cold weather. So obviously when there's no snow and you get the winds and everything, it actually kills a large population. That being not happening because of the large snow accumulation in the winter, they're going to be out in full force, and I certainly noticed them on my property, and anybody who's in a wooded area or in the grass area, check your pets, check all your children, check yourselves, wear light clothes if you're going to go into the woods because of all the, the tick-borne diseases. So be careful out there. Any public comment from the public this evening? Mr. Bursch.
Good evening. I'm Richard Bursch, the chairman of the Lunenburg Conservation Commission, and unfortunately we have had a member resign. Sheila Holt has given her resignation. Unfortunately, she and her husband started a new solar business, and most of their presentations happen to be on Wednesday evenings to different municipalities. So she is no longer able to come to any of our meetings, so she has given her resignation. We also have another member that is currently hiking the Appalachian Trail, which leaves us with 5 active members. We went to the talent bank. We have 1 person that has filled out a talent bank form interested in the Conservation Commission, and that person is Carl Luck. We have met with Carl. Carl's been on several site walks with us. He was at our meetings and hearings last Wednesday night. Definitely is interested in serving on the Conservation Commission. He is currently the chairman, I believe, of the Sewer Commission, lifelong member or resident in Lunenburg, so he's very familiar with the town. He served on the Lake Shirley Improvement Corp, I believe, quite a few years now, and is very interested in helping conserve the environment and the wetlands and help protect Lunenburg. So we would like to, as a commission, recommend, at your earliest convenience, you appoint Carl Luck to the vacated position that Sheila Holt has left us.
Excellent.
I believe her appointment is up in July anyways, so I'm not sure.
She's already resigned. We have already accepted her resignation.
Yep.
So
but if you appointed him now, I'm not sure if that would, just to fill out her term till July, or if you appoint him from now and then a full 3-year term if you have to do that twice.
I don't think we do. Do we 3-year terms on appointments? I think they're.
Yeah, Conservation Commission's 3 years.
Anyway, whatever we would have to do, unless you wanted the vacancy till July 1st, we would have to do it
rather not,
twice.
where we only have
Right.
5 active members,
Right.
so, and our voice wouldn't change between now and when he'd be reappointed.
So
in July,
it would require to, but that's
Mm-hmm.
just
Yep.
procedural, so.
Carl is here if you had any questions for him, or if you put him on an agenda and wanted to
Yeah,
come
well, he's
back.
going to be on the agenda for next meeting.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment from the public? Okay, so that will be on appointment agenda for May 5th, where we will interview the applicant. What?
You know, I'm looking at the agenda, it says interviews, appointments, reappointments, resignations. So because we have the unanimous of the Conservation Commission, we can't, I'm just concerned about the quorum issues that they're facing, and I don't know what their meeting schedule is. Is there any way that we could do it this evening, or is that?
I would prefer not to. I don't know if legally we can. I mean, we've, generally, when we've put things under appointments, we've been very clear about what the appointment is for, so if people who are interested, that's the whole point of the agenda. I don't think people should be expecting at any moment that we could have appointments. I mean,
Okay, well, then I would just suggest that we don't have that item on the agenda, if we don't have anything under it. So, because we don't have anything under it, so I'm not quite sure why interviews, appointments, reappointments, resignations is even on the agenda.
it's
So-
a title so that when they print them out.
so. Well, I mean, I just know that when we see the executive session, typically it's either at the bottom or, I mean, it just, to me, if it's not something we're going to discuss, it makes sense to take it off.
Can we do that?
Sure.
There you go. That was, all right. At 7 PM, we have a liquor license violation hearing for Mickey Shays, B&H Corporation doing business as Mickey Shays. So I will open that hearing and read into the record the hearing notice. It was dated March 19th, 2015, sent certified mail to B&H Corporation doing business at Mickey Shays, RE alcoholic beverage license, B&H Corporation's 324 Electric Avenue, notice of hearing. On April 21st, 2015, at 7 PM, the Lunenburg Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing pursuant to General Law, Chapter 138, Section 23, to discuss your alcoholic beverage license, number 063-600-039, at 324 Electric Avenue, Lunenburg. The hearing will be held in the Joseph F. Bellata Meeting Room, second floor, Lunenburg Town Hall, 17 Main Street in Lunenburg. The hearing will concern the incident report filed by the Lunenburg Police Department, received by the Board of Selectmen on December 8th, 2014, a true copy of which is enclosed. The report concerns events at your establishment that occurred after the mandatory closing time on December 7th, 2014. The hearing will further concern the incident report filed by the Lunenburg Police Department, received by the Lunenburg Board of Selectmen on March 16th, 2015, a true copy of which is enclosed. The report concerns events at your establishment that occurred after the mandatory closing time on March 14th, 2015. You may attend this hearing and be represented by counsel at your own expense if you wish. These allegations, if proven, may constitute violations of 204 CMR, Section 2.01, Sub 2, permitting any disorder, disturbance, or illegality of any kind in or on the licensed premises, and Section 1.04, Sub A, of the license regulations of the Lunenburg License Commission, also known as regulations, of operating and allowing drinks to be consumed after mandatory closing hour, and Section 1.10, Sub D, of the regulations, consumption of alcoholic beverages on licensed premises by manager or employee. These allegations, if proven, would constitute grounds for disciplinary action, including a written warning, suspension, revocation, or a decrease in operating hours of your license. If you have any questions, please contact this office, and this was sent from the town manager, again, on March 19th. So, next step in the procedure is anybody who will be providing testimony tonight will need to be sworn in by this board. So anybody who will be providing testimony, would you please stand? And I would ask that you raise your right hand. So do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Okay. So the format, just for in review of the case, will be that the town will present its case, the license holder will present its case, the board will then be able to ask questions. The town will be able to make any closing statement if necessary. The license holder will be able to make any closing statement. The board will be able to ask any additional questions if they need to. I will close the hearing, and then we will deliberate, and the board will determine if a violation occurred. That would be the first part. And then number two, if so, we would determine the penalty. So that being said, I would ask that the town present its case. Yes.
Just very briefly, members of the board, Brian Riley from Copeland and Page, Town Council. I just wanted to note for the record before we get started that I think perhaps a cut and paste error on the notice. The first incident that you're going to hear about on December 7th, 2014, actually concerns serving a minor violation and not after closing hours. But the report itself, speaks for itself, which you've seen and the licensee has seen. And then you'll hear from Sergeant Hebert as to the facts.
Just for the record, can we hear these? Do we have to do one incident at a time, or can we hear both of them and deliberate both of them at the same time?
You can certainly deliberate them both at the same time. It might, my suggestion would be to
take one event
hear
at a
from
time.
the sergeant about the December one,
Okay.
hear from the licensee on that, and then do the second one.
Okay, so I will clarify. So the town is going to present its case concerning the events of December 7th, 2014 first.
So Sergeant Hebert?
Yes.
Good evening. Sergeant Hebert, the Lunenburg Police Department. Spelling of my last name is Hebert. On December 7th at approximately 1:41, I was on routine patrol. I was patrolling the Mickey Shays parking lot, running plates in the lot. I observed a black Jaguar in the parking lot. I ran a query of the vehicle's registration on my mobile data terminal and observed that the vehicle had an expired inspection sticker and the registered owner was only 20 years old. I drove past the front door. I observed two males exiting the bar. Both appeared to not want to walk over to this car as I was in the lot. I went down the street. Approximately 5 minutes later, the vehicle went by me. I effected a motor vehicle stop on Whalum Road in the area of Joslin Street. The vehicle turned into Joslin Street and was subsequently stopped. The operator was identified to be the registered owner, George Vargas. He produced a license, which I have a photocopy of if anybody wants to see it if you don't have it. He was determined to only be 20 years old. He did have alcoholic beverages coming off his breath, and he admitted to buying, I believe it was 2 beers and a pitcher at Mickey Shays. I subsequently went back to Mickey Shays, spoke to the manager, Miss Achilla. She was also the bartender and only person on duty that night. I advised her that I had a situation I needed to speak to her about and requested that she clear out the bar as it was now approximately 20 minutes to 2 anyways. As she was clearing out the bar, she called last call and then called out the name of George Vargas. This caught my attention. I turned around and asked her why she was calling out that name. She had his credit card that he had left behind. I subsequently told her that I needed to take that credit card and obtained a receipt for the purchases that were made that night on that credit card, and it was confirmed to be, I believe it was a pitcher and 2 beers, exactly what George Vargas told me he bought that night. That was subsequent. We had some other conversation with her, but that's subsequently the facts of that incident.
Okay. And everybody has the report here from the police report.
Do you guys have the picture of his license?
We don't have it as part of
you see
this.
it, or?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The board may have some questions of the sergeant as well, but before the licensee gets their chance, they should also be, Mr. Herrick could, if he has any questions for the sergeant, this would be the good time for that as well.
Yeah, I thought that I would allow the license holder to present their case, and then if they had questions, you're saying that is
Well, if they have questions for each other,
okay.
that's perfectly proper.
Well, I would ask the license holder to come up to the microphone and ask the license holder If you have any questions for the officer's report.
I don't have any
First,
questions.
introduce yourself, please.
I'm sorry. Robert Herrick, owner of Mickey Shays. I don't actually have any questions, but I do have a clarification. One of the comments that the officer made to my bar manager was that she had the ability to refuse service to any person at any time for any reason. And there's a little bit of a caveat to that when it comes to, it has to be for specific reasons. I think, as we all probably understand, you just can't refuse service in a public place to anybody for any reason. So generally, if they're...
Certainly being underage would be a reason.
That's not what it says. I mean, that's not his instruction to my bar manager. The instruction was refusing service to any person for any reason at any time.
Right, but the requirement of your establishment is that you have to make sure, it's your responsibility to ensure that people that you're serving are over the drinking age.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a case to present? First of all, do you have any further questions for the officer or
No.
about the report?
No.
Do you have any case to present at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Lindsay
Hi.
Achilla, bar manager at Mickey Shays. Regarding that night, it was, like I said, that's not the license that he showed me when he carded me. When I carded him, my door guy was actually in the walk-in changing a keg. I saw them come in, I asked them both for their IDs. I looked at them, they said 21 on it. They went over, they ordered a pitcher, they went over and played at the pool table. His friend came back over, said that they wanted to open a tab, handed me a credit card, asked for 2 more Heinekens. I served them 2 more Heinekens. They went over, they finished, and then I saw them walk out. I thought that they were just going outside to smoke a butt. And then that's when I realized, when Officer Hebert came in, that they had actually left without paying their tab. And then that's when he informed me that he was underage. I do my very best to make sure and to ensure that everyone who goes in there is of age. Normally I have 2 door guys, 1 on the front, 1 on the back. Like I said, we do our very best to make sure that these types of things do not happen. We've never been in trouble for underage drinking before. As far as I know, this is the first incident of this ever occurring. And in order to ensure that this doesn't happen again, we double card down. Even if my door guy at the front door has carded you, when you get up to the bar, I also want to see their ID too. And if I have any doubt or any question, I don't serve them at all whatsoever. Unless they have proof or a backup or something that shows me, like an out-of-state or anything like that. I did attend the course at the Lunenburg Police Station about what a fake ID looks like and what it doesn't. And like I said, sometimes, one slips by you, but like I said, we do our very best to make sure that that does not happen. And we've put safeguards in place to make sure that that does not happen again. And that's pretty much all unless you have any questions.
Does the town have any questions of the applicant? Does the board have any questions for either party?
Yes, you claim that the ID card that we're looking at here is not the one that he showed you. What do you recall? What type of card he did show you?
It was so long ago, and I look at so many IDs. It was a Massachusetts state driver's license. I know that it was an identification. Yeah. It was, nowadays, if someone has an older brother that looks like them, and people get their license taken at 16, and then they don't get a new one issued, it's hard to tell. Women dye their hair, they wear glasses. People change all the time, and my job is to do the very best that I can to distinguish whether it's real or fake. Someone comes in and they have the right expiration date and the right birthday, and the picture looks just like them. It gets to be really hard. I know the hologram on it. I look for that stuff. My door guys have flashlights that they check the back, the front, they peel the sides. You walk in, if I should have brought it, but I have an envelope that we keep at the bar, and it's chocked full about this big with fake IDs that I've confiscated over the years. So, we definitely do a diligent job at looking and checking and making sure that does not happen. Like I said, Wednesday nights used to be a wicked big college night at our establishment, and I have to say that I'm pretty proud of ourselves that we've never, we catch them right at the door to the point where they had never even get into the building. So, as far as, like I said, as far as we do our best, you know, we try very hard to make sure that underage that does not happen, so.
Other questions from the board? I have one. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have one for town council, if I can. What is the requirement and what is the responsibility of providing or patrons presenting identification? Is there a requirement that copies be made or anything to protect this kind of incident?
There's not a requirement that copies be made. No.
Okay.
For a licensed establishment, no. There is, the state would tell you that, serving a minor is sort of a strict liability violation. You know, if you serve a minor, that's a violation of the statute. This board, as the licensing authority, you have discretion to decide if discipline's appropriate or not. You can certainly take Ms. Achilla's testimony into account that she thinks it was a fake ID. She remembers the person. She thinks perhaps he produced a fake ID. But no, there is no requirement to make people, give a copy of their license.
Okay.
The question that I have is, in looking at the officer's report, and this is a question for Officer Hebert, is, according to your report, it says you showed the manager the picture of Vargas's license and asked what was wrong with it, and we're told that's not the guy that I served, and you had a conversation about the fact that people change and that he gained weight and that he had facial hair. Did at that time the manager indicate that she had seen a different license?
No.
Okay.
Would anyone else have asked him to see his ID? I mean, when he came into the establishment?
My door guy would have, but like I said, he was actually in the back room changing a keg at the time that they came in. So I did not have anyone on the door at that point, so it was my duty to card anyone new that came in. There are instances where my door guy is standing outside and not necessarily inside the building, and there have been multiple times where I'll see people walk in and I don't realize he's standing out there. He could be in the bathroom or doing whatever, and I'll double card them. Even if I see them putting their IDs away as they're walking in, if I didn't physically see him check those IDs, I'll double card to make sure that everyone in there has been carded.
Can I make one more comment?
You may.
Okay, thanks. I just want the board to know that each one of these servers is tip certified with years and years of experience. And I wasn't there at the time that this occurred, but experience tells me that if the gentleman first lied to the officer about not drinking, then lied to the officer about not paying, then it would follow that he might lie to the officer about getting a beverage without showing an ID. I think the report states that 4 people came in at the same time. 2 refused service because they didn't have IDs. 2 were served because they did show IDs. So I just want the board to know that experience sort of tells me that when a person at that age comes in and orders an imported beverage, relatively expensive, it would seem to me they've probably had those before. And to think that he got this without an ID, you'd have to assume that wherever he goes, he doesn't show an ID and gets the same beverage. Again, thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Aquila.
Yes.
Did you see the police report?
Yes, I read it.
The report is saying here that when you saw the picture of Mr. Vargas's license as shown by the police, that you stated that's not the guy you served. Is that a correct quote?
That's correct.
Okay. So then my question for Sergeant Hebert, is obviously no one on the board here pulled over the gentleman, but you did. So we didn't see him. I would ask you, does he look like his picture?
As I indicated to Mr. Shelley, he was a little heavier set, but...
Needs to be on the mic.
Oh, yeah, you have to be at the mic, I'm sorry.
He was a little heavier set, but I identified him by his license.
Was it difficult to identify him by his license?
No.
Did you have any question that that was his license?
No, I did not.
Well, your report does say he was a little heavier and had some facial growth. So I'm assuming, is that facial hair or just that his face was larger?
His face was a little bit larger,
Okay.
and maybe he
Okay.
didn't shave for like a day. It's
Okay.
not like he didn't have a
okay.
full beard.
But in
or-
your honest estimation, was he recognizable from his license?
Yes, he was.
Okay. I also have a final question for Ms. Aquila, and that is, in the police report, when the police were there, and then you called out for Mr. Vargas, and you were holding, and they saw that you were holding a debit card, and the police took it, and they have you quoted here as saying, "Did he get OUI'd?" Did you ask that question?
Yes, it was a conversation that I thought I was just having with an officer. I was wondering what had happened. I didn't think that when they left that they were intoxicated to that point. It was just a question as to what was going on, because at that point he had not stated to me why he wanted me to close early. It was just that we needed to have a conversation because something had happened. And years of experience have showed me that if an officer wants to come in and speak to me, that something big has happened. And when you've managed a bar and worked in a bar as long as I have, that tends to usually lead to someone got an OUI, or someone got pulled over, there was an accident, or something along those lines has occurred.
Okay.
The other thing that the police report notes is that Mr. Vargas acknowledged that he did drink at the bar and that he did purchase it. So that's contrary to what was said earlier.
Just one more thing. I actually never took the debit card from George Vargas. His friend came over, and he's the one who started the tab. So when I was calling out his name to have him cash out at the end of the night, that's not who I was looking for, his friend to cash out. That's why I was shocked when he said, that's who I'm talking about, Officer Hebert did. Because his friend's the one who came over, who was 21 years old, apparently, now that I know this for a fact. He's the one who started the tab.
So what was your interaction with Mr. Vargas?
When he first came in, and I asked him for his ID. Other than that, his friend was the one who came over and ordered the pitcher and got the 2 Heinekens, and he handed me his debit card, which I assumed was his friend's debit card, because I don't ask for an ID when someone hands me a debit card. I mean, they've been in there for a while, and then people will pay cash at first, and then they'll be like, oh, I need to start a tab, and then they'll hand me a debit card. You know, sometimes they're using their friend's card or their mother's card or their dad's card, so the name sometimes doesn't always coincide with the ID. So like I stated, it was his friend is the one who handed me the card, and when I was calling his name, that's the face I was looking for George Vargas, not the face on the license.
But you saw a fake license from Mr. Vargas? You said.
It had to have been fake, because the license that I saw looked similar to, it looked like him, and it had the correct expiration date and the correct birthday to be in there.
Okay.
Could you come back up again, sir? Sorry. I seem to remember that you said you didn't know what the ID was earlier.
It was I knew it was a driver's license. It wasn't like a state ID, a mass ID, or a passport. You know, I rarely ever do I come in contact with someone who's showing a passport for an ID. Those kind of stand out to me. 9 out of 10 times I'm going to get a Massachusetts driver's license. There's those rare cases that I'll get a Massachusetts identification card, but those ones are easy to point out on the Mass IDs because everything's pretty much in red. And passports, you got to flip up like a book, so those are pretty easy to remember.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the board for either the license holder or the town?
So I do have just one more comment if you don't mind.
Sure.
Back in 2009, former Chief Bourgeois had a seminar at the police station in concert with the ABCC. And one of the they had handouts and pamphlets, which I still hold and have at the restaurant. But one of the comments that he made, and that was back in 2009, was that fake IDs are as inexpensive as $60 or as expensive as $1,000, and that was the quote. And I don't know where the technology's moved between 2009 and 2015. Very hard to distinguish between a fake ID and a real ID. There were at that time a couple of telltale signs. One of them was a hologram, and then some markings and watermarks that were on the license at the time. But again, I don't know where that technology is today. But that was the seminar.
So how do you how do you determine an ID is fake?
I have a really hard time.
He's really hard of hearing.
Yeah,
She asked, how do you determine a fake ID? What's fake and what's real?
Well, the hologram, certainly, we look at the, the date, there's some certain markings that they have. I don't have them all in my head, but there's holograms, there's markings, there's writing.
The back of the ID is a big giveaway because you have a small birthday written at the top. There's certain things, and a dead giveaway for a fake ID is you flick the corners, and if it's easily that you can peel, then that shows that the picture has been changed. Those were kind of old school IDs before the new ones came out. Like I said, it's really hard to determine a fake ID if the hologram is there and the watermarks are there, and if you flip it over and everything's the same on the back. So I mean, it's really hard to pick a fake ID from a real ID, and just from talking to younger crowds and having babysitters and stuff that are all coming up of age about this, kids make themselves look like their older siblings a lot, so that they can use their older siblings' IDs, and they pass off as that. I mean, it's, you have two sisters, you gotta change your hair, put some contacts in, and you're good to go. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard to tell, especially if a sibling's ID and they're close and birthdays. That means that one gets a new license while the other one hasn't expired yet. That in certain situations like that, it's really, really hard to tell. Unless, liquor stores now have the scanners that they use. You drop it in, you have to scan the barcode, but that type of technology is so expensive for kind of like a pub and grill that we have to do. So we just use the knowledge that we have and the education we have on fake IDs, and we make our best judgment call as to whether it's acceptable or not acceptable. And like I said, my door guys and myself and all of my employees have been trained to try to point out the difference, which is why I'm kind of really disappointed in myself about this, that this occurred, because I'm the most seasoned one there. I'm the manager. None of this stuff should get by me. And I kind of feel like a fool that it did. I really do. So the only thing I can say is that we've put the necessary things in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Mrs. Bertram.
You mentioned the scanner, and that was one of the questions that I had. I've been at several establishments in which, everyone is required to put their license through a scanner, and I just want to understand what that technology does, and will that identify a fake ID right away? And I don't know if you're familiar with that technology or...
As far as I know, we have that technology on our BT machine. It's not hooked up to the registry. It just simply reads what's on the card. So if you go to the registry and you change your address and your old license still has your old address on it, when you scan that card through, it's going to come up with your old address. Basically, it just takes everything that's on the front of the card, puts it in a barcode form on the back of the card. That's pretty much all it does. It doesn't go to the registry to computer
Yeah,
to say, hey, is this correct or not?
Okay, because I was at an establishment in Worcester, actually not too far ago, that they scanned it, and I actually asked them, what are you doing? And they said, we're scanning it with the registry information, and they had a picture of me and a picture of my license, and they could compare the two, and I was really surprised, because I hadn't seen that, and I've now seen it twice since then, so.
They might have that technology that goes to the registry, but I can tell you the technology that we have at the police station that goes to the registry through our BT machine does not do that.
Okay.
It just simply reads the front of the card. So if you're under arrest for OUI, I scan your card, and you have since changed your address, I have to physically go in and change it.
Okay.
So for a bar to have that kind of technology where it actually goes to the registry, I kind of find it hard to believe.
Okay.
Okay?
If you would just remain there. So the gentleman, Mr. Vargas, who was driving, he did not, you saw him making a wide turn and everything, and you
Yes.
smelled alcohol, but you didn't feel it qualified for an OUI?
He was given field sobriety tests, and he passed those, and the passenger of the vehicle took over control of the vehicle, who was over 21. So he also had passed the field sobriety test. But just for clarification, this whole thing about fake IDs and stuff, I asked George that night, it's in my report in the third paragraph at the bottom, if anybody had ever ID'd him, and he stated to me, no. And there was some deception, as Mr. Herrick referred to. However, after that, he did admit to buying beer at the establishment. He did admit to drinking beer at the establishment. He admitted to buying exactly what was on the receipt at the establishment. And again, when I asked him if he was ID'd, he specifically stated no. So according to him that night, after being untruthful, he told me that he had not been carded at all. So,
Okay,
that's about it.
thank you. Any other questions? What, if I can ask town council, in the strictest sense, what is the liability, I mean, what is the responsibility of the license holder in cases such as this? I mean, what is the ABC see as the proper level of proof?
Well, that's, I referred to earlier, not to discount that there's probably some pretty good fake IDs out there. Serving a minor is a violation of the law. If someone gave you an excellent fake ID, I think the board could understand how that could happen, but strictly speaking, it's still a violation of the law, and a violation.
So the
of
onus is on
terms.
the license holder?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, we're going to end the testimony on this event and go to the second event, which was on March 14th of this year, and ask that the town present its case on that event. It should be in here. Yes.
Last 3 pages.
The last page.
What's that?
You are.
Okay. Again, Jack Heber for Lunenburg Police Department. Again, this was working the 11 to 7 shift as my normal patrol. I was patrolling the area at approximately 2 o'clock. I drove by Mickey Shea's. I observed numerous vehicles in the parking lot. I continued past the establishment. I went and checked the bar closing at a couple other bars in town. I went back to Mickey Shea's at approximately 2:07, drove into the parking lot. As you drive by the front, you can see into the building. However, the front door and the windows are heavily tinted, so you can't actually see what's going on. You can just see shadows. I went around the back of the building. There was, I believe, 5 or 6 cars in the back. A couple of them were known to me to be employees or people that frequent that establishment. I came back around to the front of the building. There was a gentleman coming out the door carrying a speaker. At that time, I had stopped and had a conversation with him. I learned that he was the musical talent for the night. He was in there late cleaning up. I walked in and I observed 10 other people in the bar, so there's 11 people total. There was the barback, Miss Achilla, doorman, and the musician that were all employees of that establishment. There was 7 other people that were not employees of the establishment, one of them being a 19-year-old male. He subsequently submitted to a PBT, a preliminary breath test, and came up 3-0, so he hadn't been drinking that night. I had spoke to Ms. Achilla on the previous occasion as well as this occasion about refusing entrance to people that are under 21. We had another conversation on this night about that, and everybody was subsequently cleared out of the bar.
Okay, does the license holder have any questions for the town from what was just presented? Okay, then I will,
I actually have a question.
yeah, no, but we're not
Okay,
going to do that yet.
okay.
We're going to ask the license holder to present their case, and then we can ask everybody
Okay,
questions.
okay.
I'm gonna kind of translate if he can't hear what you guys are saying.
No problem.
I have one good one.
So what
Oh, I
was,
thought you had-
tell me about the
I thought you had a
events
question
of
for me.
March
This is
March
you-
14th.
You talking about
Oh,
Nate and the.
Oh, okay.
This is
Um,
your chance.
I came a little earlier when you were in executive session to drop off. Just a comment again, I wasn't there that evening, but I have had in the past some issues with the doors and locks. I've been broken into on 3 separate occasions. Most recently was the 26th of January. And I never did get a report from the detective, but in any event, the day after that occurred, I called a lock company and had the keys and the locks changed. And they're mechanical. By code, we have to have push doors. And over time, these things can loosen and what ended up happening, I'm assuming, again, I wasn't there, but the door would close and it would lock, but if you tugged on it, it would open. And so at that point, I guess, in speaking with Lindsay, she had told me what occurred, and she called Nathan, who was one of the people on the list of people that were there late. Nathan is a certified locksmith, and again, has worked for us on occasion at the door. So she called him. He was able to come up and at least get the door to lock. And the receipts that I made copies of, excuse me, I made receipts showing, first of all, that the locks were changed, and then the follow-up visit from the locksmith 2 days after the incident report.
So
Okay, I'm going to be very honest in saying I'm not drawing the line that you're trying to get at.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I'll let her explain that.
Okay, pretty much what had happened that evening was I had live entertainment. We had called last call. Everything was all set and done. I was getting ready to get everybody out. I went to go lock the front door and it wouldn't lock. I pulled on it, kept popping open. So I ended up calling Nathan, who's a locksmith, to come down and help me figure it out, because I knew my time was getting close, that I had to have everybody out. When he arrived at 1:35, 1:40, he had 3 people with him. They all got out of the car. They were working on the lock. They had got it locked, and then we had propped the door open so my DJ could bring his equipment out and everything. I was discussing options on things to do with the lock and everything else, and then that's when I had noticed Officer Hebert walking up to the door. That's when I said, we had some stuff going on, and at that point he just asked for everybody's ID, and I didn't really feel that it was no use in explaining what was going on. He just, it was just wanted the IDs, and that was it. So we did that. And when it comes to the other people that were in the bar, those were my bar back, my door guy. He was doing the same job that night. Actually, no, he was my Nathan. No, Eric was my bar back. He was working the door. That was his girlfriend, his girlfriend's sister and her boyfriend, and they live out in Lowell. So his girlfriend had used the bathroom. She had just walked out of the bathroom. She was leaning over the bar to give her boyfriend a kiss, because they were all going to go to the car and wait. Again, that's when we saw Officer Hebert walk up to the door. Instead of telling everybody to run and hide and do anything, I just told everybody just to stay where they were. It's better. I didn't want to try to hide anything. We weren't trying. It wasn't anything like that. We were just trying to get the lock squared away. They were using the bathroom. They had a 45-minute ride back to Lowell, and everybody, it was 2:07. Everybody had their jackets on. Everybody was getting ready to walk out, as it was anyways. The 3 guys that showed up with Nathan were actually helping my DJ get stuff out of the bar so that we weren't there any later than needed be. So pretty much that's the situation, and that's what happened. I had issues with the lock. I guess I can't leave. I would have been sleeping there that night if he didn't come down and fix the locks. Obviously, third time we had been broken into, it gets a little sketchy as to the doors popping open and things like that. We have since then fixed the locks per se. We can't change the doors. That's really expensive, but we have come up with other solutions so that if this occurs again and I can't get the door locked, we have other things in place that I can bind the door from the inside so that when you pull on it, it can't come open. I've also instilled, me and my father spoke about it, and to ensure that situations like this, if they do occur again and I have an issue, we've changed our closing time on Fridays and Saturdays now. We decided that we're gonna call last call at 1 o'clock, serve till 1:15, and everybody is out of the building by 1:30. So that way, if I do run into any issues or I have any problems, I have a half an hour to try to figure things out. And that way, if I go to lock the door at 1:15 and I realize that, oh no, I have a problem, I'm giving myself ample amount of time to try to come up with a solution so that if I do have to call in somebody to come fix something, it's not an issue of them being there after 2 o'clock. So that's, any questions?
I have a question for Officer.
Yep.
I'm saying Officer Sergeant Hubert.
Sorry. Okay. Was the story of this door reported to you in this report this evening?
There was one night that I recall on 11/7 that the door would not lock.
On this evening, on this event.
I don't know. I know there was an issue with the door lock. I don't know if it was this night or if it was back in January that Mr. Herrick referred to. But we did have an issue one of those nights. It's not in my report, so I'm going to assume it wasn't that night. It was the previous night back in January that he had spoken about.
Okay.
So if there had been an issue, you would have mentioned it in your report?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, because both reports refer to individuals being in the bar that are underage, and this report specifically points out a male individual that was 19 years old. I'm just unclear on what the law is. This is a restaurant as well as a bar. So what is the law relative to underage individuals if it is in fact a restaurant as well as a bar?
It's my understanding that since it is a restaurant, legal counsel would probably refer to this more.
Okay.
It's my understanding that they can have people in there that are under 21.
Okay.
However, as most of you recall, we were back here February, I believe it was, of last year for a similar incident. After that night, I spoke to Mr. Chiller and Mr. Herrick downstairs, Officer Brock and I did, about people being in there. And during the first incident, that's what I was referring to when I said she has the right to refuse service to anybody at any time, was the underage people. After a certain hour, my suggestion was, sir, after a certain hour, do not let people in here that are under 21. When you're the only person, there's no manager on, you're the only bartender, the bartender/manager for the night, you can't possibly keep an eye on everybody or watch everybody for the night. So just don't let anybody in here that's under 21. Somebody has a fake or a license from another state. I've spoken to her and other bars, and my explanation is somebody from Pennsylvania is not coming out here to go to Fitchburg State. So if you get a Pennsylvania license, question it. Ask them their zip code. Ask them their address. Ask them something that's on the front. That's going to confirm whether it's fake or not. These are suggestions that I have made to her in the past. And again, it continues to happen with people being in the bar that are under 21. On this incident, the gentleman had not been drinking.
Right.
However, on the prior one,
Right. I guess I would ask to follow up with counsel as to what the law is if someone came in to a restaurant, which is also a bar, after, late in the evening, does the establishment have the right to refuse entry?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I know that if you are a restaurant that serves alcohol, you don't have to keep people out, like if you're at a tavern that does nothing but sell alcohol. It's not a violation for someone underage to be in there.
Okay. Because it is a grill as well as a pub,
Right,
so it is a restaurant, and so I would just want to be clear that having someone in underage is not necessarily a violation. Obviously, serving them is.
Correct.
But having...
I think the answer to that particular question is simple. I mean, Ixtapa is a restaurant, and kids are there all the time with their parents.
Right. I just want to understand that.
Can we make a quick comment?
Sure.
Based on the incident report, we've actually, since I received that report, we've instituted a couple of changes. One of them that was mentioned is the officer wasn't able to determine who was working. I've since ordered new shirts with a logo in the front and 8-inch staff printed on the back, so could easily determine who's working, who's not. I've also instituted a policy that once the kitchen closes, and that's sometimes 10, 11 o'clock, no one under 21 would be permitted to get in. And those who were there would be, if there was anybody, would be marked, right? The last thing, and I think you mentioned about closing at 1, you mentioned that, right?
I told them how we started closing by 1:30.
All right.
One last question for you, Sergeant Hebert. Was anybody drinking at this time in this event?
Not that I could see.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One follow-up question to the proprietor. You mentioned receipts. Did you provide copies of receipts? Because I don't have that.
Yeah, she was asking where the receipts were from Twin City Lock.
Oh, they're there.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
So everyone who's not working needs to be out by 2 a.m.?
Out, yes.
And as long as people are working, they can stay in there after 2?
Oh, actually, I think they're supposed to be, what?
Oh, 1 hour.
Yeah, so in your own regulation, section 1.04, section B states that owners and employees must be off the premises no later than 60 minutes after the official close.
Okay.
They can be in working and cleaning, but no patrons can be in.
And on this night, there were 7 people in the bar who weren't working?
Yes.
That's a lot of people. That seems like a lot of people to fix a lock.
They were out and about. He wasn't on the clock working that night. He came to do me a favor because I called him in a panic. He's a former employee. He works the door sometimes there.
You have to speak at the mic.
Sorry.
That's okay.
He's a former employee. He sometimes works the door there for us. And I knew that he has a background being a locksmith, and he works for Twin City. So I called him in a panic, saying I couldn't get the door locked, and he was with his buddies, 4 of them. So when he got to the bar, they were with him. And when they first came in, it was early enough that they were allowed to be in there, but they were all kind of helping him fix the tumblers and stuff on the lock and on the door.
Is there any reason you didn't report that to the officer?
I just, you know what, he came in and asked for IDs, and at that point, I didn't think it wasn't going to make a difference at that point. Right now, I wish I had.
Because it would have been very helpful for us.
I wish I had said something, but I just felt that there was no use in trying to explain or anything. He just kind of rules the rules, and it's 2:07, but I just didn't. I should have. I really wish I had at this point. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
I know, but I didn't. And that's my fault.
And the 4 individuals, you mentioned that he had 4 with him, so that's 5. What about the other individuals?
The other individuals, Norma, I know them by their names if you look. Norma is my barback's girlfriend. The other woman that was there was her sister and her sister's boyfriend. And like I said, they had all just got done using the bathroom. She was leaning over to give Eric a kiss goodbye, and they were going to go wait in the car because they had a 45-minute ride back to Lowell that night. So everybody was standing up. Everybody had jackets on. I had, finishing bringing the door guys, the DJ stuff out. There were no drinks. Pretty much all my closing work was done. We were all pretty much just getting ready to walk out the door. So.
Now, you mentioned that you've implemented a closing time now on Friday and Saturday, that last call is at 1. and everyone needs to be out by 1:15, is that
Yes,
correct?
it depends on the crowd that I have. If I'm busy, I'll call it at 1. If I have, 10, 15 people in there and it doesn't look like I'm gonna have a big issue getting them out, I'll call it at 1:15. As long as I make sure, my rule is as long as everybody is out by bar time. Now my bar clock's 15 minutes fast. I go by the bar clock. I want everybody out of there by 1:30, bar time, no later, no exceptions, nothing. I don't want to take the chance of any of this ever happening again.
So
And if-
that's really 1:45, is that what you're saying?
No, it would actually be 1:15 real time. We set our bar clock 15 minutes ahead of normal time to ensure that, these types of things don't.
What time was last call when it was 2?
I call it at 1:30, and
Okay,
then
so
I
you-
serve till about 1:45. But we have an issue with the 1 clock that we do, and we actually ordered another one. It jumps sometimes, so sometimes I'd look up and it'd be 35 minutes fast. And then that's when we'd start going by our cell phones or our watches and kind of judging it that way. We're waiting for Girardi to drop us off a new clock that doesn't do that, and we can set it to the right time. But before then, we were just basing cell phones or watches or just kind of looking at other clocks because we never really knew how far ahead the clock was going to jump. It's on a 12-hour cycle, so it gets screwed up. It's not on a 24.
Sounds like you haven't been overly concerned with closing time.
I have, but since our incidences, the last time with people being in there after hours, I have been very, very diligent about making sure that people are out of there when they're supposed to be, and to ensure that the only people that are in there are employees. Like I said, that night just got a little screwy with the locks and then them giving a kiss, and it was 2:07 and everybody had their jackets on and getting ready to walk out the door. I actually had the guys that came with Nathan, they were actually helping the DJ bring some of his equipment out so we could get out of there even faster. So we like I said, I do my very best. I want to make sure that this does not happen again, and that no offense, that I'm not sitting back here in front of you guys. So I figured if we changed our times, that would ensure that everybody's out of there by real time. I mean, I'm out of there by 1:30, doors are locked, and there's nobody in there. I make sure that I get all my closing work, all my cleaning, and I get everything done before 1:30. And if I have to swing it to 1:45, that's bar time, so that's real time 1:30. And I'm out of there by real time 1:30, and it's just to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Did you say the new clock is already up and working?
No, we ordered it from Girardi. It's a back order. It's a Budweiser sign, and it's got the birth date and the year and the date and the time all built into one. So they don't just have them on hand. You actually have to order, wait for them to deliver it and stuff. So we called and ordered one from Girardi about 3 weeks ago. And they said our Girardi distributor told us that it should be in within the next week.
What are you using for a clock in the meantime?
We're using the same one. I just keep adjusting the time every night before I leave. I make sure that it's set to the time that it's supposed to. And then when my father goes in and opens in the morning, he double checks to make sure that it hasn't jumped. And then we use cell phones or watches and stuff. And if it's 1:35 real time, then I know that it's 1:50 bar time. I just set it 15 minutes. I just jump 15 minutes ahead to make sure. And the closing early, it seems to be really working. A lot of my patrons aren't even upset that I'm, throwing them out a little bit early. I said this is how it's going to be from now on. So, and it seems to really be working. I haven't had any incidences since. I'm making sure everybody's out of there. The parking lot's empty unless someone leaves their car overnight or anything. Making sure everybody's out of there. So.
Sergeant Hebert, have you had an opportunity to patrol the area since this incident, and have you seen that the bar is completely shut down by 1:30?
I have noticed the early closing, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board for either? Town have any final remarks on this incident? Does the license holder have any final remarks? All right. So, I will declare that we are closing the hearing, and we will go into the board deliberating. We'll take each incident separately. of the two. So we're starting back on the December 8th or December 7th, 2014 incident. Anybody like to open up the deliberation?
I guess, yeah, it's actually comment on both incidences that the explanations that are brought up tonight were not told to the police department at the time, so were not included in the record. No information regarding what went on that has been looked to be for an extenuating circumstance. So I've got a problem with that testimony.
Anybody else?
I would say that I'm disturbed because we have had a number of incidences before, but I am pleased with some of the things that I'm hearing as far as an earlier closing time, shirts that now clearly identify employees, once the kitchen is closed, that no one under 21 is allowed. One thing that I would like to see, as I heard mention of, the person who's checking the door being away from their desk or getting a keg, or that person shouldn't be away from the desk. And if that person is away from the door, then someone else should be there. Someone should be at the door all of the time. Especially given, this incident. I mean, I'm concerned with that because it's very difficult to be monitoring a door and being responsible for taking care of the kegs or for doing another errand. So that concerns me. I am pleased with some of the things that I've heard.
For the record, I should say that this is the third time that your establishment has been before us on possible licensing violations and the liquor license regulation violations over the past, going back to September 17, 2013, and that is for 5 separate incidents. This would be 6 and 7. No one comes close. We had one other hearing. I have spoken to the police in their patrolling of other facilities in town, other establishments, as was noted in Sergeant Hebert's report, that the night of the after hours that he went to all the other places and they had no problem closing up. They don't have clocks that fall back. They don't have locks that break. They don't have a series of things that seem to happen at your establishment. We've had to hear about Halloween parties that went awry and all these different instances. And most flagrant being the incorrect record on manager for 3 consecutive years. I would certainly say, to the extent that I'm glad that you're taking them seriously and that you've instituted things to change them, but that doesn't change the fact that these happen. And both of these are your responsibility, clearly. It's no surprise that people want to drink underage and come up with phony IDs, that every establishment's facing that. So that doesn't make the story special, but I think you have to take concerted effort to make sure that doesn't happen, which is what I asked town council and wanted a clarification of. As far as people after hours, I mean, 1 person being in there, maybe. 2 person as a locksmith team, maybe. But maybe you should have told the officer so it was in the report. You would think that would be an important element. I take these violations, number 1, in and of themselves, the minor one, very seriously. The after hours one, since this is the 3rd one in 3 years, very seriously. If I were you, I would have instituted these a long time ago, the changing of the closing time to make sure this didn't happen. They make clocks that don't fall back. They actually make accurate clocks in the world. I know it's hard to believe. But I I feel that the police have done an excellent job in not singling out this establishment, to making sure that it's fairly looked at on all their patrols. And I think the reason why this establishment is before us is because you've been incapable of following the regulations. And I think that instituting the new rules that you have will keep you out from being in front of us, which is good. But still, we have to deal with the ones that are in front of us this time, and to realize that, again, this is the 7th violation in 3 years. So that is very serious to me as well. Anybody else want to say anything, comment on anything, ask anything?
That was one of the reasons when we had the hearing in January of 2014, when I voted to issue warnings but no suspension, was to send a message that this really shouldn't happen. And so I think that there needs to be some action taken for a temporary suspension.
All right, well, we have to do the termination first, but I hear you. If there's no more discussion on the deliberation, I will ask for a motion on the incident of December 7th, 2014.
I would move that the board impose a 2-day suspension.
No, we have to, this is just in finding whether they have,
okay.
have broken, this is just if a violation occurred.
I would make a motion that we find that on December 7th, that there was serving of an underage patron on a violation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. And as to the March 14th, 2015 incident of people being in the establishment, non-employees being in the establishment after hours.
I would make a motion that we find that there was a violation on March 14th of violation due to patrons being in after hours.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So now we go to the penalty phase. So again, I think we'll take them serially, and we'll look at the, do we have to town council, do we have to do them individually? We should do them individually as far as a penalty? Or can we do it as one covering both?
Either way would be fine.
Okay.
Either way, they would have a right to make an appeal, but no, I don't think it needs to be.
Doesn't have to be itemized?
Correct.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we impose a 2-day suspension for covering both offenses.
Before that's seconded, I would offer that it really should be much more serious. Only because, number one, I think serving a minor is a serious violation in and of itself, and that this is the third after-hours violation, as Mr. Ebersol said, where we didn't penalize them at all. And my personal recommendation would be a 7-day suspension combined. 2 for the after-hours and 5 for the minor.
I'll withdraw my motion.
I believe a 7-day, I'm not opposed to the 2-day suspension, nor even something between 2 and 7, but I would be opposed to a 7-day suspension.
While I agree the seriousness of serving a minor is, and the violation is absolute, it is the first occurrence of that, and I think that's the one where I would probably be a little more lenient than I would normally on a serving of a minor. On the other account, while I agree it was a violation and one of multiple violations, one of my recommendations was going to be that they consider changing their, or that we consider imposing a change in hours, and it seems that they've done that voluntarily. I might suggest that we consider making that part of our finding.
And I would agree. I would not be opposed, since what I'm hearing is that everyone's out of the bar by 1:30. I would require that the closing time be 1:30.
The only problem with doing the 1:30, then they have to, if they're going to meet the standard, they're going to have to close even that much earlier. They're voluntarily closing at 1:30 so that they meet the 2:30. So therefore, assuming they may have issues in the future, they'll be closing at 1 to meet the 1:30.
I'm confused. My understanding is that all patrons have to be out of the bar by the closing time, but the employees and the individuals that are working there have another hour that they can stay, so that doesn't change the 2:30 deadline as far as employees leaving the premises. It just, changing the closing time to 1:30 would mean that all patrons must be out of the establishment by 1:30, but individuals working in the establishment can be there up to an hour after closing time.
Right. What I'm saying is that if they have voluntarily closing at 1:30 in order to avoid an issue, if we move it up to a closing of 1:30, they're going to have to voluntarily close at 1 so they don't have this issue again.
They can voluntarily do whatever they want.
Right.
I'd like to impose an earlier closing time.
Right, but what Mr. Ebasol said that's the logical next step.
I agree.
That means, are the police acting as licensing authorities supposed to go there at 1:30, and if then they have to close even earlier? To me, just to be clear, to me, it's a simple matter of everybody. We have several locations in town that have these licenses. And we don't have a constant parade of people coming in here. It's a matter of following the regulations and taking the regulations seriously. I submit that the license holder, in this case, doesn't take the licenses seriously. You gave them a warning, as Mr. Ebasol said, and I was against that. I thought we should have suspended the license then, so this didn't happen again. So are you going to be very lenient again, so this doesn't happen again? I would purport that we should save ourselves a lot of time if you're not going to do anything serious and not have these hearings, because the board does not want to treat the licensing seriously.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think anyone said that they don't take this issue seriously. And in fact, in September, when the board took a vote on this, we did issue a 2-day suspension of the license to sell alcoholic beverages on February 14th and February 15th because of the issue regarding the manager on record. So we have taken it seriously, and we did suspend the license. You are correct. In the other 2 incidences, we did not. I don't think anyone here has said that they are opposed to a suspension. I simply said that I believe a 7-day suspension is too much. But to infer that none of us are taking this seriously is unfair. I think all of us are taking this seriously.
The 2-day suspension was given after 3 consecutive years of perjured applications. Perjured applications that the applicant knew were incorrect.
I would make a motion that we impose a 5-day suspension on the license to sell alcoholic beverages. Do we have to give the date? Do we have to provide for an appeal period?
Please.
My recommendation would be to choose some dates, put it out just enough to see if they do file an appeal or not. As I indicated, I think if you saw the opinion I sent earlier, I go through this with all the boards I work with. The statute is very peculiar in that it says a license holder has the right to appeal to the ABCC, but that does not put a hold on what the board orders. And so my own opinion is the ABCC kind of likes to see you put a date, and if they do appeal, put a hold on it so they don't have to serve the suspension that they're appealing. But so if you, but I would recommend setting some dates, tonight, maybe a couple of weeks out, and see.
How long does the license holder have to appeal?
We would need to put the decision in writing, and they have 5 business days after, Monday through Friday, from when they receive it. So it's
okay. So if we put the suspension for 2 weeks out, that gives plenty of time for all this to happen.
Yes, I could work with Ms. Spidell's office to get a decision out, hopefully even tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we will impose a 5-day suspension starting May 22nd and going through May 26th, which covers Memorial Day weekend.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I will say aye.
Okay. Okay, so that will be written up and submitted to the license holder, and you will have, once you receive that decision, or in writing, that you will have 5 business days to appeal. And I believe I'll offer it up to the board because, as town council wrote in an email to us about this, it is customary, it's not required, but it's customary that if the license holder appeals, that we would hold that suspension until the hearing in front of the ABC is held, so that in case the ABC does not find with us, that they would not be penalized prior to their hearing.
If that were the case, we would have another meeting where we would
Set the date.
set the date.
Yep.
Do we have to have another noticed hearing, or
No, I don't believe so.
No,
just?
it's not, wouldn't be any new evidence or anything. It would just be to reset the dates.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you everybody who gave testimony, and this... Thank you to town council. Discussion review of annual town meeting warrant articles.
So the only one that I wanted to go through this evening is the fiscal 15 budget adjustment article. You should have received a copy of some information I put together reviewing the changes since the last time that we spoke about this. I will just go through those briefly. Just a few items. The final snow and ice deficit is $259,300, which is $9,300 higher than what we had talked about previously. The veterans benefits deficit is a little bit higher by about $2,900 to around $60,000. And then we did, right at the end of last week, receive some good news from Maya, which is our insurance company, that we are receiving some additional participation credits. Couldn't have come at a better time. $18,490. So I'm able to cover those 2 additional deficits and also reduce that proposed cut to the pavement management program by about $10,000 to $42,000 instead of $52,000. So slightly better. There is a spreadsheet attached. Everything else is the same as what we've talked about previously. And I don't expect that we're going to have any last-minute changes before town meeting on this article. So this, I don't have the motion put together just yet where that says where we're going to transfer to and from, but if you were so inclined to recommend approval of this evening, I think that would save you one last thing to do on the morning of town meeting. I certainly will let you know if there are any other changes, but I don't expect any at this point.
Well, if there's any other changes, we would need to revote, so, right.
So is there a number that goes in Article 9? Like a, the bottom line number, or
the
no?
only additional appropriation will be $250,000 from free cash. Everything else will be a transfer to and from to zero out everything else. But there will be a very lengthy.
I was going to say, to answer your question, it's going to be a page-long motion.
I think I had to read it last year, if I remember.
That in the old days, we had to read, but now the town moderator lets us project it and say as printed.
So the participation credits are just from people going to workshops and attending?
Well, they're
training?
that, and also Maya, when the trust does well overall, they release credits to all of the members based on the performance of the trust. So it's a combination of those two things. Most of it is coming from the trust releasing because of good performance overall.
Great, great news.
Yeah.
There was talk about taking money from the pavement management plan to cover the fiscal 15 budget. Is that still proposed with these adjustments?
It's still proposed at 42,000 instead of 52,000. But that doesn't mean at the end of the year it'll be 42. It could be less than that if we do better in some other areas.
And what is, we propose to pay a portion of free cash to cover the snow and ice deficit. What does that leave in free cash?
That left just over $50,000, but that has been, is proposed to be applied to the fiscal 16 budget to help the deposit going into the stabilization fund to maintain the 5% balance.
I understand the reasoning. I understand that it's, the only place that we have it, but we as a board made a commitment that pavement management was going to be a priority, as did the Finance Committee, and it's always the go-to place. And it's simply because of timing, because the money hasn't been expended, and because of the timing, it's done, paving is done in the spring, so it's the place that has money. And yes, let me just finish.
I'm sorry.
Yes, we are receiving additional funds from Chapter 90, but the reality is the reason we're receiving those funds, and the reason other communities are receiving those funds, is because of the deplorable state of our roadways. So I just, if we make pavement management a priority, it needs to remain a priority, and it can't be the go-to bucket.
And I share your frustration, because I'm frustrated that the fact of the timing of when that gets expended, there is no other place to go, and that's why it keeps being the place that it's looked to.
I would make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 9.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Any other articles?
No.
Okay, announce the settlement of the DPW employee collective bargaining agreement.
I didn't write anything up. Do you want me to do
Yeah, just summarize, sure.
So at your meeting last week, you met in executive session, you reviewed the proposed DPW employees collective bargaining agreement and approved that agreement 5-0. It is for a 3-year period, as we talked about in executive session. It's for fiscal 13 through 15. We were able to make a lot of improvements in the contract, but it took a very long period of time, and in the very near future, we'll be looking at the subsequent agreement. We were able to combine 2 different working groups into one contract, which is a benefit to the town, and we were able to do that because we had a mid-managers group and a laborers group, but the mid-managers really are working foremen or crew leaders. They're not involved in any employee hiring or discipline, which is why you typically would have supervisors and employees separate, so that's not something that we needed to do here. The overall cost of this contract over the 3-year period is 5.9%. The average annual cost is 1.97%. We were able to take the existing grid that had 6 steps and 4% between each step to convert that to a 10-step grid with steps at 2.5%, which is consistent with other contracts. We were able to get a consistent set of management rights between the 2 agreements. We negotiated in a performance evaluation process in form that is not subject to a grievance process. We eliminated personal leave and agreed to a merit evaluation, which is the performance evaluation system. And as I mentioned before, that really was cost neutral. The group giving up the personal leave in lieu of the merit system is cost neutral for the town. So those are the key highlights of the agreement.
I just want to thank the town manager for her involvement in, asking for directives from the board and bringing those to the union. I want to thank the union membership and their for working together. I think we've done a really good job over the past several years of getting contracts that are sustainable and stay under the 2.5% while being fair to all employees across all the unions. So I thank you for your hard work and your diligence on that. Minutes. Any minutes?
No.
Okay. Warrants. Payroll in the amount of $641,756.88. Accounts payable in the amount of $143,362.86. And another accounts payable in the amount of $306,468.25. Action file issues. Any action file issues?
Any word from MRPC on the regional dog officer grant process?
No, but I have a meeting scheduled on Thursday this week on some other items, so I will touch base with them again.
Can you check on the possibility of incorporating a GIS layer for stormwater?
That's my meeting on Thursday.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Board of Health.
Report?
Building reuse.
We have a joint meeting with the school committee on the 30th of this month,
Do you know where that's going to be yet?
right here, I believe. It's not set in stone yet, but I think it's going to be here.
Televised?
No, it's a workshop format.
Is it specific to the line?
Yes. And it's pretty much contained to the line. I know that this board and the planning board have both indicated that they wanted to get in on that conversation, and we all agree that that's a good idea, but we wanted to just lay out a proposal to the school committee on the lines, and then have them chew on that, and then we'd be able to all kind of talk about it.
Okay, so this is the first of a
First.
couple of meetings?
I would think
Okay.
so, yeah. It's the first.
Okay.
Capital Planning.
We'll meet on the 5th.
Finance Committee.
Meets this coming Thursday, will not be televised.
Library Board of Trustees.
Meets this Thursday.
While we're on the library, what is the status of the remediation of the leak of the water damage there? Do we have an update?
I'd have to request that from the director.
Okay, if we can get that, that'd be great.
When I was at the library, it really contains just a very small part of the library is involved, so it seems to be operating fine.
MPO.
No report?
Planning Board.
No report?
PAC.
No report?
School Committee.
They're meeting with building reuse, and they are going to also discuss FY16 modifications and vote during that meeting,
Okay.
according to the superintendent.
School Building Committee, so the top-off ceremony is going to be April 30th at 9:45 a.m. sharp, if anybody can make it. It will be, I believe, behind the high school. I'm a little bit unsure about the location because I wasn't presented that, but we want to be, obviously we have to be a safe distance. We can't be on the construction site, and that area between the high school and Turkey Hill allows you to see it at a distance, so. But that will be, it'll be a short ceremony, but they will be putting those two beams. The beams will be at the Lunenburg High School in the auditorium, so people can sign them. So all the students, they're hoping all the students can come over and sign them and put them in place.
And all the students will be there for the topping off, right?
I
So you
think
just
that-
have to look
yeah,
for the
they're
whole
coordinating
school
between all the
population.
principals, yes. They're coordinating with all the principals, yeah. At least, I think it's basically just the high school and the middle school. I don't know if the primary school is coming over, but that may be true, because
think
otherwise
they
it's
are,
required
actually.
busing, yeah.
They are going to bus them over.
Okay. Sewer Commission,
No report?
Town Manager reports.
Okay, I have two. I'm going to take the second first because I think this is why Mr. Londa has been patiently waiting at your meeting. John Londa, Jack Rodequins, and I last week met with a company called Power Management Company LLC. They are a solar advisor. We had a very good and interesting meeting. We have a lot of opportunities for solar, just like homeowners do, and we are as affected by inability to move forward in solar projects, just like many of the homeowners in Lunenburg. The school in particular is interested in looking at the feasibility of putting solar panels on the new building. That's a charge that Mr. Londa has. This company is one that would work with us and help us push that forward. We have to go through a request for proposals or qualifications process. There are a number of other buildings and facilities that we'd like to relook at for the potential for solar. And this company would do that work for us at no cost to us. The fees that they receive are through agreements. And if you have specific questions about that, I think John probably could answer because he got some detail about that. But I did just want to let you know that this is something that we're interested in pursuing, relooking at buildings. Some of the technology may have changed slightly since the last time we looked at it. There are opportunities for solar in parking lots, so you can get covered parking and solar. We have quite an opportunity because the project, the net metering project that we have on Chase Road, we've talked about this before, even though we refer to us receiving net metering credits, we don't receive credits, we receive cash, the value of those credits. So we still have the opportunity to partner with projects that would give us credits as well. So we would like to move that forward. And I just wanted to mention that because obviously everybody's talking about solar and the lack of a great amount of the community, or great portion of the community, not being able to do anything right now. We are in that boat just like everybody else. The new school project is part of one of those circuits that is affected. But we would like to continue moving this forward because we're hoping that there will be a solution for the circuit, the required circuit upgrades in the short term.
Should take this opportunity also to say that the town manager and myself met with 3 representatives of Unitil this afternoon, where we discussed, we wanted to hear from them in their own words, where we are, what the technical aspects of the situation are, what regulatory structure, rate structure, et cetera, got us into this position, and how we're going to be trying to move forward to remove this obstacle that is facing homeowners in 80% of our town. So it was a constructive meeting. There was no definitive response because the response is, just like the structure itself is complex because it involves the utility companies, it involves rates, it involves shareholders, it involves the DPU, it involves lots of moving parts. That's going to be the long-term resolution, but we talked about potential short-term resolutions to try to get this over this hurdle while the DPU and all the governing bodies can come up with a long-term solution, because again, this is not just something that's going to face Unitil. Unitil just happened to be the utility it happened to first, but National Grid and Eversource are going to face the same things on some of their circuits in certain locations. So as soon as we have more information and feedback from them, they're going to take back some of our suggestions and talk to their management team to see how we can go forward. We'll continue talking with our state legislation and working toward a solution. No one has forgotten about this. I want people to be aware of that, but it's not going to be something that's going to be fixed in a week or so. It's going to take several months to try to get this resolved, and that's on the most optimistic of timetables, so.
I would just, I would hope that we move towards a resolution, or Unitil moves towards a resolution quickly, because, with the expiration of the rebates and the federal tax incentive, that's going to severely affect people's ability to install solar. So obviously, time is of the essence.
Yes, and we did, they understood that going in, but we certainly reinforced that, yes.
I know they talked about equipment at the substation that needed to be upgraded to allow the power to go in reverse. Is there still issues with the actual power lines in various neighborhoods as well?
No.
Is that the next issue that, if we add all the power that would come off of Oak Ave, there's good lines there, but if somebody else is doing something on Page Street or somewhere else, is there issue with those lines?
They had a member of their engineering team here. I think he was the director of engineering. And certainly there is, on the specification of the lines, there is a limit. But the capacity that is going through those lines already is not going to be overcome by the people making DG, distributed generated energy. It eventually could happen.
Well,
but that would be everybody in the whole, let's say everybody in this whole town goes on at the same time. And even then, remember that the power coming from, before distributed generation energy, everything was designed to go one direction. And so they had high capacity lines that did the transmission. They got broken up at the substations to delivery and distribution lines. So any of those lines has its own specific capacity. He did not indicate that would in any time in the near future, meaning, he didn't give a timetable, but it certainly sounded like years and years away that we would reach that.
I guess I'd like to have Unitil ask the question for each of the streets in town, because while on the days when the power that would be sending back, it would be a lot more than going the other way if every single house on a street did it.
Right. Well, that is at the substation. That is the problem we have now, is that they've reached the capacity in the circuit that on a day that is a beautiful day that doesn't require air conditioning in the spring, mainly in the spring and fall, that people aren't using a lot of utilities, so they have their windows open, nobody's home in the middle of the day, so it's bright sunshine and everybody's generating electricity, that amount of being generated is larger than what is being used, so therefore it pushes the electric upstream and it can't all be utilized and distributed. That's the problem we're at right now.
Right, but I'm still concerned about the actual power lines in some of the rural areas, because I know that when Chase Road went through, part of the thing they had to verify, because that was such a large installation, that the wires on Chase Road would actually support it.
Right.
And they determined that they could. They wouldn't be able to put that in some of the rural areas of town because the lines are too small. So I'm concerned that when they fix one thing, that they have to be aware of what other things in town may need to be fixed.
Sure. And we can ask that. So he's going to give me that information. I will say that from the Director of Engineering, that what we heard from Mr. Conway, who was part of our Green Communities Committee, who's also a member of the technical group, the DG technical group, that I had asked, okay, when they do these upgrades, is this a one-time deal? And they assured us, not that I didn't believe Mr. Conway, I did, but just to reiterate from Unitil that yes, this is a one-time upgrade that opens, in his words, opens the floodgates at anybody. There's not going to be another upgrade of this nature needed once the upgrade is done. So, but we will keep you posted, and as soon as I get his information, he didn't have a business card, and Mr. DiNapoli from Unitil is going to send me his contact information. I will email the Director of Engineering your question, Mr. Ebersol.
Thank you.
Did Mr. Londa want to comment?
Did you have a comment? Greetings.
Good evening. John Londa. when we went through in 2010 with Borrego on the landfill, that essentially was the issue we were coming up against. The need to upgrade infrastructure to be able to support the distributed power coming back onto the grid. So that's something we saw down in that part of town, but now we're seeing it, for smaller systems here in the center of town.
Right. And what Unitil was clear in telling us is that no one foresaw that it would come down to a residential installation that would finally be the tipping point. They thought it would be more in line with people doing substantial solar farms that who would have it within the economics of the project to pay for the upgrade. Now, I personally told them that I thought that was really not foresightful in thinking that was going to happen, because as these projects, as these technology becomes more and more affordable and provides homes with the energy they need within a small footprint of their roof, clearly this was going to ramp up very quickly. We had different narratives on that. Let's just say that. But that was what they foresaw that was going to happen. But again, everybody is in agreement, not just Unitil, but everybody I've spoken with, that it has everybody's attention. The DPU realizes that the block that's in Lunenburg right now goes against the very nature of the Green Communities Act that was passed in 2008, that wanted everybody to go to cleaner distributed generation energy. So I'm sure they will be providing quick, in governmental terms, solution, but we really need something quicker than that, and that's what we were talking with Unitil about. So.
Right. Do you think you'll be looking at the primary school for solar as well?
That was probably one of my lower priorities. We do have, a south-facing roof on the gymnasium that would be suitable for solar, but the front of the building has got, too many dormers on it to really put solar there. So we think that might be a location, but I think clearly the new middle school, high school has got much more capacity, and there we're thinking, we would like to see something in the range of 300 kilowatts. So something about 3 times the size of what's on the middle school. And at the primary school, it wouldn't be anywhere near that.
Excellent. Thank you.
So then
Before we go to the next thing, I just want to say, because I just have to recognize Mr. Londa for the work he's done on green energy initiatives, and I invited him or asked him to come to a Girl Scout meeting recently, and because our Girl Scout troop is looking at energy, and he did a phenomenal presentation on the initiatives that the middle school has done, and so I just want to publicly recognize his expertise and his work on behalf of the town. So.
Did he get cookies?
He did. Not Girl Scout cookies, but cookies. Were they baked solely
with solar energy?
Okay, so my second item, and I stole yours because I can't find it.
I was looking for mine. I'm hoping that's mine. Okay.
I don't know where mine went, but I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes on the third quarter financial statements. A lot of this, the expenditure side, we've talked about ad nauseum, but the town accountant did prepare the third quarter reports. Third quarter represents 75% of the fiscal year, and at that mark, we had collected 76.78% of our estimated revenues and expended and/or encumbered 72.9% of appropriation. So we are on good track despite all of the changes that we need to have town meeting make to the current year appropriations. In terms of revenue, I highlighted 5 different items. The local options meals tax remains strong. At the end of the third quarter, we had collected almost $75,000 of our $85,000 estimate. We've collected 74.57% of real estate taxes, which is excellent. We do have a very strong real estate tax collection, but a lot of times our fourth quarter will collect more than 25% because people are catching up or have that incentive to pay before we go through the lien process. We've collected 86.17% of licenses and permits, and I made a note that typically our fourth quarter collections are strong because these are building permits, electrical, gas, plumbing, so typically in the spring that activity is higher than at other times of the year. Our ambulance fees collected to date are almost 83%. Most of that, I think, probably has to do with the change in the fee structure that was approved during the fiscal year and not anticipated when we put the estimate together for that particular revenue item for fiscal 15. And then motor vehicle excise tax collections are strong at just under 80%. And we did have the second commitment of the calendar year billed just a couple of weeks ago in the amount of $172,000. So I do expect that we will collect at least very close to 100% of our revenues, which is good. And then expenditures, I don't know that I need to take up any more of your time going through those. We've talked about them several times in the proposed budget adjustments. There isn't anything there that you haven't seen before. So there is a complete copy of the revenue and expenditure report, and I will be presenting that to the Finance Committee on Thursday night as well.
We have the letters here that Mrs. Luck proposed to go to our state senator and state representatives concerning the water district. So I'm going to sign those here. We agreed last week, and so they're here in hard copy. But I see there's not one to Mr. DiNatale. If we can get one to him, that would be great.
And has the meeting with the water district been scheduled?
It hasn't. I offered the 2 dates in May. They said that they didn't pick one, but that they would be picking one in May. I followed up with the superintendent today with an email, and I'm going to try to meet with him next week to make sure we keep this moving.
Okay. Just a point on that. I know that at the open comments section last week, Mr. Rogers suggested we go to their place and see his maps and everything. I would strongly prefer that we meet here so that we can televise that meeting.
I have asked the town manager to set it up here for the first meeting because I think I understand all the availability of data, but I want to have a much higher level discussion about this that I think needs to reach a large audience. I think that's part of the thing that was discussed was, that not a lot of people knew about this. So I think the first one should be here. We have the televised capabilities, and then I think there would be probably a subsequent meeting later where we do meet at their location.
Thank you.
And have we received any information from the water district yet?
The superintendent sent over a couple of documents today that I forwarded to you. You probably didn't see them because it was just before the meeting. One was a letter from their hydrologist talking about didn't see this as an issue, so that the letter, and he sent over a map identifying the different areas, the well areas.
I did have an opportunity to speak to Mark Bursch, one of the water commissioners, about this issue, and one of the things that I relayed to him, and I certainly will say at the meeting with the water district, is that I understand that this project is in the infancy and that a lot of work needs to go into determining whether or not it makes sense to enter into such an agreement. And as I stated at that meeting, my concern is the hydrology, the capacities, the DEP permit, the potential impact to Lunenburg, the services to Lunenburg, whether or not we'll be able to expand for our economic development or for other areas that need water, such as Pleasant View Ave. But what concerns me is that moving forward with enlarging the district to another community before that it seems to me to be backwards. It seems to me that we should be doing the investigation before expanding the district. And we had a a good conversation, but one of the things he suggested is that we, as a board, try to identify our concerns and forward them to the water district so they can be better prepared for a meeting. And I don't know what the consensus of the board is. I know that I have specific questions that I would like to have addressed, and it may make sense to be a more productive meeting if we, at least in a general sense, outline those to the water district. So I just wanted to ask what the thoughts were on that.
We can collect that. I mean, from my standpoint, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I know about one article.
Right.
I want to hear from them what everything is involved. I don't want to take any, necessarily any position on anything until I hear from them. So I don't even know what questions I'd want, except, can you explain to me, I guess, high-level, executive summary, what the purpose of the whole project is, and how, why it's in the best interest of Lunenburg.
And I would agree with that at a high level, but I also have specific questions about the hydrology and what studies have been done, and so I'm happy to forward those to the town manager.
Sure.
And I would think that if anyone else has any specific questions they want answered, to forward them to the town manager so that we can have, hopefully, a more productive meeting when we do meet.
Well, when I spoke with Marielle Stone from the DCR, she said that the water district was already at capacity, and they have to get permission to increase their capacity in order to extend the district into Lancaster.
Well, again, these are all things we want to...
Right. And I'd like to understand, it was alluded to at the last meeting that there was, we talked about other areas of town that have expressed an interest in having water, and I'd like to understand what that process is.
Mm-hmm.
So, even understanding that process, and I'd also like to understand if those roadways were in the district, whether it's through a betterment process, so those types of questions I have no problem forwarding so that they can be addressed at that meeting.
No, I think you're right. I think if anybody has specific
Right.
questions, it would help the meeting to
Right.
provide them. I just don't have them because to me, the questions I'll have technically at the detail level will stem from the general conversation at the beginning, so, for me.
And when the town manager of Lancaster called me, he said he had lots of information that the water district had forwarded to him. And I asked him to send it on to me, but I haven't heard back. So maybe we could ask the water district to provide us with that information because, at this point, we don't know enough to ask good questions.
Right.
If we had that information that they've already sent to Lancaster,
Right.
maybe that would help us.
So could,
I talked with the former town administrator of Lancaster, and apparently Lancaster has been in talks in the past with the town of Shirley to provide water. And apparently there are other aquifers in North Lancaster that would be suitable for their own wells. So certainly not questions for the water department, but questions for the process of why isn't Lancaster doing some of that on their own?
Right, and one of the other things that I brought up is similar to what the planning board does, is they have a peer reviewer that looks at things, because while I understand that there doesn't want to be a lot of funds expended if, in fact, it's not feasible for them to expand the district, my bigger concern is that the impact to Lunenburg, and the studies need to be done before I could even potentially consider something like this. And frankly, I'm concerned about our economic development and our citizens. But I think I don't know what studies have been done, but my feeling is that those studies need to be done before we think about expanding the district beyond our town lines. And so and if that means if it's done at Lancaster's expense, then so be it. But I don't think the process is correct to expand the district and then do the studies.
And also, the water district's annual meeting took 16 minutes, and there were 10 votes. It's hard to believe that the water district wouldn't have a quorum. Most
Again, I don't want
organizations-
to run into the issue that we had last week. Let's wait till we meet with them.
Right.
And we can ask all these questions.
And if
I don't want to speculate. There are conceptual questions we have to ask. There are factual questions we have to ask. I think they're willing to work with us, and I think we should just get to that first step first.
But if you have specific questions, I think that forward them to the town manager, and she'll make sure they get to
Right.
the water district.
So one thing that I wanted to mention, I don't know how closely anybody pays attention to that agenda item, outstanding agenda items list that we have, but one of the items on there is something like how water works in Lunenburg, and it's been on for years and years since I've been here, because it's not something that I understand particularly well. But what I do know is we essentially have 3 water districts, and I'm going to use that term loosely, in town. We have the Lunenburg Water District that has a service territory. We have the Lunenburg Water Department that has a service territory, and we have the City of Leominster that has a service territory within the town of Lunenburg. So the Pleasant View area in particular is part of the Leominster Water District, and they, for lack of a better term, they're really exclusive franchises. One district can't service another district's area. So, and I just mentioned that because Pleasant View has gotten mentioned a few times, and that's really part of Leominster. And Lunenburg Water District isn't going to try to serve them or have plans to serve them. Years ago when I started here, I asked the superintendent of the water district, what about just having Lunenburg Water District service Lunenburg, all of Lunenburg, and do away with the Lunenburg Water Department and residents having to deal with another municipality. And it just, I think I mentioned this before, it's a very cumbersome process to expand the boundaries, and it wasn't something that the water district at that time was interested in entertaining.
Expand the boundaries of the, well, I mean, if we're going to be doing this, to expand it to another community, and we have, I mean, I've heard, and I don't know, but perhaps this should be an item on our agenda, the Pleasant View water situation. I've heard that there's issues with those lines, with pressure, that the residents have experienced problems with water in that area. And if in fact that's the case, and if it's not, if we can't share or redelineate the water district area, then I think we as a board should be talking with the City of Leominster about the problems that our citizens are facing. They're going to be going through a sewer upgrade, and if in fact it is not possible to extend the water district, although I'm having a hard time with that if we're looking at extending it to Lancaster. We have a situation in our community where residents are experiencing problem with water. So it makes sense that if we're going to continue, if it's going to continue to be under the jurisdiction of Leominster, that we ask Leominster to address it during the construction of the sewer line and the paving of that road.
Well,
we actually could do it or the water district could do it, the Lunenburg Water Department could do it, because that's what we did when we put sewer in, the sewer on the southerly side of Whalem Road used to be Leominster Sewer. Right. And that the town took that over, and whatever that we had to do through an act to discontinue from them to us. So it's cumbersome. There's a process. The state law says you can't have 2 municipals in the same district. But so you vote on both sides to change it.
It is doable.
Well,
sure.
right. So
faster than electric.
That's probably how. God, I hope that's not true.
Perhaps part of the discussion is, if you're looking to expand your boundaries to take in Lancaster, how about expanding them to take in parts of Lunenburg that aren't covered?
Right.
Because
Well, one of the things that would be helpful, because you mentioned these 3 districts, if we could have maps of what those districts are prior to that, that would be helpful.
Right.
yeah, I'm going to draw those, I think, because
I don't care if they're in a purple crayon, if we get
They
some
prob- they
estimation about
probably
where
will
these
be.
are.
Yes. Okie dokie.
All right. That is our agenda items. Now, we are not scheduled to have a meeting next Tuesday, and there
Correct.
seems to be no reason to have one, correct?
Correct.
So we are posted for the day of town meeting. We will meet at 8:30. Should that be enough time, or should I put it at 8? Let's say 8.
Yeah. That's
8 o'clock.
probably-
You're bringing coffee?
I'm going to need coffee to remember to bring coffee. So that's the annual town meeting, and of course, I should announce that annual town meeting is Saturday, May 2nd, starting at 9 a.m. until
Who knows?
open-ended, until the articles run out
At the high school.
at the high school auditorium, yes. Okay, I would entertain any public comment Final public comment from the board.
Motion to adjourn?
Any final public comment from the public? Okay, now.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Good night, everyone. See you at town meeting.